everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Alicia Renee, and this is the Save for Real podcast. And on this episode, our very first episode, season one, episode one, we will just be getting to know me, introducing myself to yourselves. All right. So, as you know, my name is Alicia Renee. I am 34 years old. I have two children, two lovely boys. Carter, who is 8, Cassius, who is 6, and they keep me very, very busy. Okay. So, a little bit about my background. I was born and raised literally in the church. Okay. My mama was born and raised in the church as well, and she married a pastor, which is my father. He is a pastor, and they have been pastoring for a long time, the majority of my life. Okay. And prior to them becoming pastors, they were faithful, devoted members. So church is literally all I knew and all I ever knew. Okay. If you can relate by being a PK, either a pastor's kid or a preacher's kid, drop something for me in the comments because, baby, if you can survive being a PK, you can survive anything. It's not for the weak. It's literally not for the weak. And I got a whole episode on where I dive into surviving the life of a pastor's kid. Because, baby. So, as I started to get older and going into my own direction, I went off the deep end a little bit. I do feel like it has a lot to do with me being sheltered. My mama didn't play that. It wasn't no spending the nights. We weren't going to no parties. We weren't going to no sleepovers. Like we weren't doing anything that the other kids were doing. And of course, at the time, I felt left out. I felt like they was being too strict. I felt like they was doing too much. But in retrospect, that saved my life. That literally saved my life. So I started to rebel. I never was like blatant rebellious. We had to be sneaky with our rebellion. Like these kids now, they rebel right in your face. Okay. I had to be really sneaky with mine. So I think like around 13, 14, I just started doing stuff that I knew I wasn't supposed to do. Sneaking around with boys, um, drugs. It led me further and further away from Christ, obviously. I had in my mind that I wanted nothing to do with the church. I didn't want to be saved. I thought being saved was a very boring, miserable life. A lot of the people that I saw in the church who was saved, it didn't look appealing. Like, I'm like, this is what being saved is. Like, if that's what's being saved, baby, count me out. I'd rather go to hell. Honestly, that's where my mind was. Like, I'd rather go to hell if being saved looks like that. If being saved is miserable, boring, ugly, overweight, and sad, and broke. Like, let's not forget broke. I don't want that. Like, if that's what Jesus is giving y'all, baby, you can keep Jesus. And that's just me being honest. That's where my mind was. And that's just where I was with it. Like, of course, I knew of God. And I, acknowledged God in my life as far as saying my prayers before I went to bed and blessing my food. But other than that, me and God were very, very, very distant. When I was about 18, I was introduced to a older man. He was 48 at the time, and I was 18, going on 19. So there was a large age gap. It started off as like a sugar daddy, sugar baby type thing. And he would just give me money and buy me clothes. And that was that. I was living with my sister at the time. I was smoking weed in her basement, and it was the wintertime, right? So I'm smoking weed in the basement, not realizing that weed is going to go through all the venting in the house. And that's exactly what it did. Her whole entire house was smoked out. And her kids was upstairs asleep. So I deserved to get kicked out. So she kicked me out. I didn't have nowhere else to go. So I called my sugar daddy. So I was 18, 19, living with a an almost 50-year-old man. When I say that out loud, looking back, like, girl, what were you doing? I did work with this lady from my church, and she ended up snitching. She told my mom, like, yeah, she mixed up with this man that's almost 50, and like she off the chain. Mind you, I had got kicked out of my mama house and I got kicked out of my sister's house. So I'm just out here trying to get it how I live at this point. And I remember my mom just being, like heated. And then they really ain't want nothing to do with me. They gave me kind of like an ultimatum, like, you can go on about your business if you're going to deal with him, or you can stop dealing with him. And I chose to go on about my business and continue to deal with him. And it came back to bite me in the tail. Okay. So that chapter of my life ended up ending, and I saw a commercial that made me want to go to the military. I felt like I had nothing else to lose. I felt like I really had nothing going for myself at the time. And I just knew that if I didn't make a change, if I didn't get out of the environment that I was in, that I would end up in a very, very bad situation. I saw that commercial. That commercial was kind of what planted the seed. And in the back of my mind, I was just like, like that might be something different, And then I was hanging out with some of my friends, hanging out on the block, doing stuff I ain't got no business. And one of my really close friends committed suicide. He was on a pill, and we was in the house blasting music. It was an abandoned house, and that was like our little hangout spot. And we were blasting music. He had a warrant out for his arrest, and he was off a pill and obviously like hallucinating. Well, his sister came to knock at the door. She was banging on the door because the music was so loud. So she had to bang on the door. And for whatever reason, he thought that it was the police coming to get him. He ran in the bathroom, shut the door, and shot himself in the head. And that was my first experience around suicide. And that shifted my perspective on life. I was like, okay, if I don't get out of here, if I don't do something different, I'm probably going to end up like that. And the next day, I went down to the recruiting office. I talked to somebody. I said, hey, I seen a commercial. What do I have to do, to join the military? And he told me what I had to do. I went down to the recruit office, I want to say in May, and I ended up being shipped off to basic training July 3rd. So it was quick. And of course, my family didn't want me to go. I was really close to my sister and her children at the time, my niece and nephew, because that time I was living with her. Those were like my babies. My sister was a single mom of 2 kids, working and going to school. So a large part of my life during that time was helping her take care of the kids. So to have to separate from her, from the kids, and even from my mom, even though we weren't the closest at the time because of the choices that I was making in my life, it was a hard decision, to go. Mind you, I had never really been out of, my hometown prior to that. So the fact that like I'm leaving for good, like that was, it was a really scary thing. My sister didn't want me to go. My mother didn't want me to go. Nobody wanted me to go except for my dad. I talked to my dad. My dad said, you know what, Alicia, if you make this decision based off of what other people want you to do, or based off of what other people think or what they feel, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. If this is what you want to do, then do it. And after that conversation, it was solidified. They dropped me off and I was off to the military. I did about 9 years in the military. I was Army. And that is a period of life that I have to dedicate to a whole episode. I will have a whole episode dedicated to stories and things that has taken place while I was in the military. Now, I did get married and divorced while in the military. I was married to my oldest son's father, and I also met my youngest son's father. and got pregnant. And unfortunately, while I was pregnant, he passed away, also due to suicide. So I will have a whole episode dedicated to that part of my life. I medically retired from the military, and when I got out, I came home shortly to just visit my family because I had been away for almost 10 years at that point. And then I moved to Florida with my boyfriend at the time. Now, he and I were in a relationship for about 2 years, long distance, because I was in the military and he was in Florida. And I thought I found my happily ever after, y'all. Okay. I thought that this was it. Okay. My man, my man, my man. All right. Now, mind you, I'm still at this point, I'm still far from the Lord. I'm not thinking about God. I ain't thinking about church, none of that. I'm living my life. You know what I'm saying? So I moved down there with him, and COVID happened. We moved January. It was like January 2nd or January 3rd. It was right after the new year. And COVID happened like February, March. I feel like it was shortly after we had moved in together. And man, COVID really exposed our relationship. It exposed a lot. He wasn't able to go to work. I wasn't able to go to school. The kids weren't able to go to daycare. So we were literally forced and stuck with each other in this little bitty townhome. And I started to slowly pay attention to patterns that I couldn't pay attention to before because of the ripping and running, taking the kids, picking up the kids, me going to school, me going to the gym, me, doing all of these things, being out and about, to where I wasn't as vigilant as I could have been. Well, once the world shut down, I was hyper vigilant because I had nothing else to do. So I'm paying attention to everything. So I started to see patterns that didn't make sense. The math started not to math. And one day I went through his phone and I saw everything I needed to see. That was the last time I picked up a man's phone. I will not ever do that again. Okay. So, ladies, take it from me. Leave that man phone alone. If you got the urge to go through that man phone, pray it away, go for a walk, go for a run. Leave that man phone alone. If you're not ready to see what you think you're going to see, leave that man phone alone. Okay? Leave it alone. Leave it alone. And eventually I ended up packing my boys' things and we left. I didn't have much. I left with 2 trash bags, a trash bag full of toys and a trash bag full of our clothes and shoes. And I got on the road and I came back home. Now, mind you, I didn't have anything to come back to. So I came back to my mom's house, and me and my boys lived in my parents' basement. And I'm so thankful for that time in my life because my parents allowed me to stay there, rent free, save my money and fix my credit and stuff like that. And I was able to get an apartment. And then a year after I got that apartment, God blessed me to be able to purchase my first home. So if it wasn't for that time that my parents allowed me to, stay in their house and save my money and just get myself together, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So although that was very embarrassing, I never wanted to come back to Toledo, Ohio. Never. Like, that was one of the things that I told myself once I left and I experienced other cities and living in other states. I was like, oh, I'm never going back. And life for me just started to look much better. That breakup really hurt me. I don't think I had been that heartbroken before. And it put me in a space of depression. It put me in a space of suicidal ideation. It put me in a space of, I'm never going to be good enough. And I think in an unhealthy way, I always kind of chased that family dynamic, just because that's what I had. My parents are still married to this day. It came to me being a a single mother, that was never ever a part of the plan. When it came to me being divorced, that was never a part of the plan. So I think in an unhealthy way, I chased this need for a family. I had two parents in the household. I wanted my children to experience two parents in the household as well. But we know that God does all things well, and He has been keeping me. He has been sustaining me. Ladies, let Jesus be your co-parent. Okay? Let Jesus be your co-parent. So that's where I am now. Welcome to another Saved for Real small business segment, where each week we will choose one small business to highlight in hopes to bring more awareness to your business. And what makes this my favorite segment of the show is because it's free advertisement for small businesses. And we know how expensive advertisement can get. But come to the Save for Real podcast, where it is completely free. The only thing we ask of you is that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and that you follow us on Spotify and tell a friend. That's literally the only requirement. So if you or anyone you know is interested, please send 2 high-quality promotional pictures along with a brief description of your products or your services to alisharenee at savedfrpodcast.com. That's alisharenee at savedfrpodcast.com for your chance to be featured on the Save for Real small business segment. Now let's get into this week's promo. This week's small business segment goes to Rhonda Whitty, who is a real estate agent operating in the Michigan and Ohio areas. Rhonda offers over 20 years of professional experience in the real estate industry, and she guarantees excellent customer service from the beginning to the end of your process. So whether you're looking to buy or sell a home or simply find the value of your current property, for the best in the city, they call her Rhonda Whitty. She can be reached at rhondawhitty.howardhanna.com. That's rhondawhitty.howardhanna.com. And she can also be reached by phone or text at 419-944-9232. That's 419-944-9232. For the best in the city, they call her Rhonda Whitty. Now let's get back to the show. In 2021, after the breakup, that's when I started to really see God. I knew that I had given everything else a chance. I tried drugs. After I got out of the military, I became so much of a weed head. It wasn't even funny. I couldn't get out of bed without smoking. I couldn't go to sleep without smoking. So since obviously I couldn't indulge in weed in the military, heavy alcoholic, heavy on the alcohol. And when I got out, I was like, this is my time to shine when it comes to weed. So that's literally all I did. And it was probably about 2021 where I just felt empty, and I was tired of trying to fill that emptiness with everything. I was trying to fill it with weed. I was trying to fill it with alcohol. I was trying to fill it with a man. I was trying to fill it with ambition and degrees and accomplishments. And I just felt so empty. I'm like, I have my house, I have a business, I have a degree. Like, I am retired at the age of 30. My children are well taken care of. I'm well taken care of. But there was still such an empty piece in me that I could not fulfill. So I said, Lord, I'm just going to give you a try. And it was that nonchalant. Like, I was not expecting my life to truly change in the capacity that it changed, because in all honesty, I really had no desire to being saved for real. I just didn't. The idea of being saved that I had was tainted. I didn't know what being saved really was. So I said, Lord, I'll just give you a try. I tried everything else, so I'll give you a try. But I meant it. It was nonchalant, but I meant it. I had given everybody else a try, so why not give Jesus a try? And that's when my life changed forever. I started to experience God in a different way. God started to reveal himself to me in a way that he never had before. I did still struggle with drinking and smoking, but I was still very much seeking his face and fasting and praying and reading my word. Being saved, the process of sanctification is just that, it's a process. So for some people it does happen like overnight, like, hey, I gave my life to Jesus and now I'm going to go home and I'm gonna flush my weed down the toilet and I'm gonna pour all of my alcohol down the drain. It didn't happen that way with me. It was a gradual process. God was gradually grooming me to who he wanted me to be. And slowly, the taste for alcohol started to leave. I remember one day I had went, it was probably like a Friday night, and I went to my kitchen, I poured a shot in a shot glass, and I put it up to my mouth, and just the smell of it turned my stomach. And I knew that that was God. I knew that that was a Holy Spirit and a sanctification process starting to work on the inside of me, because God knew my heart. With weed, it took a little bit longer because we had a stronger hold on me. But slowly and surely, I didn't have the urge, the desire to smoke it anymore. Talk about deliverance. God can deliver you of anything, any addiction, any pain, any heartache, anything. After me fully giving my life to God and fully trying my best to live safe for real, that's when ministry started to awaken in me. Now, I knew that I was always called to ministry, because I was brought up in a prophetic ministry. So it was prophesied to me on multiple occasions by multiple prophets that I would be used in ministry. I never knew how and I never knew when. I also never had the desire. But God has a way of working all things out. And here I am on Say For Real podcast. This is ministry, y'all. Period. This is ministry. I had started ministry on social media at first. TikTok. I had a few TikTok videos that went viral of me sharing my testimony, and I didn't realize that that was ministry. And then I started to just kind of share the gospel on Facebook and just kind of let people know, like, hey, I am changed. And if God changed me, he can change you too. So that's where I'm at now. I'm starting this journey, this podcast journey, just to share my story. We will have guests featured on some of the episodes, and just kind of talk about some of the things that a lot of people in the Christian world and don't really discuss. There are just some stuff that I feel like people are afraid to address. But in this setting, we are going to address all things. Nothing is off limits. Okay. This is a real world that we live in. This is a real show, the Save For Real podcast. And I am a real person. We're going to get real. So that's pretty much it about myself. Y'all, let me know about yourselves in the comments. I'm so excited to start this journey with you all. I'm so excited to meet some of you all in the future. And I'm excited to just share the gospel. I'm excited to share my testimony. And I'm excited to help as many people as I can know who Jesus Christ is. So that's it for this episode, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. And I will see y'all in the next video. Wherever you go, take Jesus. And if you can't take Jesus, don't go. Bye, y'all.